The morning light spilled through the towering glass windows of the Apex corporate headquarters, illuminating the pristine marble floors and sleek, minimalist decor. The air buzzed with urgency, executives clutching reports, analysts murmuring about market trends, and assistants tapping hurriedly on their devices. Deals were being made, careers were being built, and ambitions were being sharpened like knives. No one paid any attention to the woman pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway. Evelyn Carter had walked these halls for over 15 years, quietly fulfilling a role that most barely acknowledged. She wore her faded gray uniform with quiet dignity, her brown hands steady as she wiped down glass panels and polished the company's nameplate. Apex prided itself on being a symbol of modern corporate excellence, yet to people like Evelyn, it was simply another machine, one that ran on the efforts of those it barely noticed. The executives who strolled past her didn't know that Evelyn understood the company better than most of them ever would. She had seen people rise and fall, watched the true power players maneuver behind closed doors, and learned how the gears of influence truly turned. But no one knew that Evelyn had a secret that would turn Apex Corporate upside down. 15 years ago, Evelyn had entered this building under very different circumstances. She wasn't always a cleaner. In fact, she had once been a promising business analyst, a woman with a sharp mind, an eye for patterns, and a determination that outmatched most of her colleagues. She had worked tirelessly in Apex's finance division, identifying gaps in company reports, recognizing fraud before it could escalate, and optimizing strategies that saved the company millions. Her boss had praised her. Her colleagues had respected her. Until one day, she discovered something she wasn't supposed to. She had uncovered discrepancies, millions of dollars being funneled into untraceable accounts, false profits being reported to keep shareholders content. When she brought her findings to her superiors, expecting praise for her diligence, she was met with silence. Then came the dismissal letter. Officially, it was for underperformance. Unofficially, it was because she had dug too deep. Apex had made sure her reputation was tarnished enough that no other major firm would touch her. With bills piling up and a son to support, Evelyn had taken the first job she could find, ironically, in the same building that had once seen her as a rising star. But this time she was invisible. At least, that's what they thought. Evelyn moved through the boardroom with practiced efficiency, her presence unnoticed as the executives discussed company figures. "The annual report looks flawless," said Victor Harrington, the company's CEO. His deep voice carried an air of untouchable authority. "The board meeting next week will go smoothly, as always." A chuckle echoed across the table. "Of course," said another executive. "Apex is untouchable. No one's daring enough to question our numbers." Evelyn's grip tightened on her cleaning rag. She knew the truth, just as she had known it 15 years ago. The fraud hadn't stopped. It had evolved, becoming more sophisticated, harder to trace. And the worst part? The same people who had ruined her career were still the ones profiting from it. That night, as she sat in her small apartment with a notebook in hand, she began writing. Names, dates, figures. She had spent years watching, listening, remembering. And now, she had everything she needed. It was time to make her move. Evelyn didn't rush. She knew patience was her greatest weapon. Over the next few weeks, she carefully gathered everything. Paper trails left behind, confidential files executives carelessly discarded, conversations that confirmed her suspicions. But she wasn't going to simply expose the corruption. She was going to take the company. What no one at Apex knew was that Evelyn had never truly lost her shares in the company. When she had first joined as an analyst, she had been awarded stock options, a standard incentive for employees. Unlike others who sold theirs for quick cash, she had held on to hers. Over the years, through careful investments and silent acquisitions, she had gained more. And now, she was Apex's largest shareholder. She reached out to an old friend, Samuel Blake, a well-respected attorney with a history of bringing down corporate fraud. She showed him everything. By the time they were done, Samuel's expression had shifted from intrigue to admiration. "We have enough to bring the whole place down," he said. Evelyn shook her head. "Not just bring it down. Change it." The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived. The room was filled with Apex's most powerful figures. Victor Harrington sat at the head of the table, exuding the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. The meeting had barely begun when the doors opened. Evelyn stepped inside. At first, no one reacted. To them, she was just the cleaning lady, until she walked past her usual place, by the water dispenser, and took a seat at the table. Harrington frowned. "You're in the wrong place." Evelyn folded her hands on the polished wood. "Actually, I'm exactly where I need to be." A murmur rippled through the room as she slid a file across the table. "This contains records of fraudulent transactions, insider trading, and evidence of Apex's systematic exploitation of employees. Everything the SEC and the Department of Justice would need to dismantle this company." Harrington's face paled, but Evelyn wasn't done. She turned to the other shareholders. "I also have documentation proving my ownership of the majority stake in this company. Effective immediately, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence against Victor Harrington." Stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Harrington laughed, though it was hollow. "You really think you can just waltz in here and take over?" Evelyn leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "I already have." Samuel, her lawyer, spoke up. "The evidence has already been submitted to regulatory bodies. The only way to prevent a complete corporate collapse is for Apex to cooperate, starting with Harrington's resignation." The board members looked at one another, some hesitant, some relieved, and then, one by one, hands began to rise. Harrington was out. In the days that followed, Apex Corporate underwent a transformation. Corrupt executives were removed. Employees, especially those mistreated and underpaid, were given a voice. Policies were rewritten, and for the first time in years, real integrity became part of the company's foundation. Evelyn never took on the title of CEO. That wasn't her goal. Instead, she appointed leaders who valued ethics over greed, people who understood the company's true potential. She wasn't invisible anymore, and as she stood outside the towering glass building, looking up at the name that had once symbolized her downfall, she felt something she hadn't in years. Victory. Because sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one no one sees coming.